I'm delighted to be the chair here for this final session before lunch, Power of Stories in Creating Change. So we've got four people here. You have their biographies in the brochure. I just say a word about each of them. We're under time pressure. We have a half an hour total. It's not really designed for questions and might be an opportunity, but probably won't be. There's half an hour in total, so people have 7 minutes each. We're going in the order of the programme, which is Anna and Zlata to begin with. Both Anna and Zlata are respectively director and producer. Director and producer of numerous award-winning documentaries. I'll single out the one that you're going to get a clip from and have a discussion on, a panel on this afternoon. Someone to Love. So it'll just give you, I suppose, a taster of what's going to happen in the last session this afternoon. David and Nicole are respectively. Together. It seems that there are three words that seem to describe both of them. That's multimedia writer, so a writer of, say, poetry, theatre, stories, film. So multimedia writers, the performers, and their creativity facilitators. So, so over to Anna.
Quicker, more efficient if we talk together, go together. Thank you very much for having us here. Delighted to be here. We'll tell you a little bit about a documentary that we did for RTE in 2014 called Somebody to Love, that dealt with the topic of disability and the world of love and relationships. So we'll show you just first.
Maybe to start, it's probably good to give you a taste of it for anybody that hasn't seen it. Because I know RTE don't keep these things up online, so unfortunately it's not possible to watch it anymore, but maybe they might repeat it at some point if we put some pressure on. It's so nice to watch a project that you worked on again, because it kind of reminds you of the time that you had making it, because I suppose we went through a journey of learning and making it. And one of the things I suppose that we did when we came up with the idea to approach this topic was we went around and met an awful lot of people that never made it into the actual programme, but that really helped us to understand, I suppose, why previous programmes had not been liked by the disability community, and the issues that were there, the fears people had around representation, and how we could address those and maybe try to improve on that. I'm not saying that we definitely got it 100% right, but people seem to be very happy with it, certainly from the feedback we got. And it was really, really important to us. So we had some kind of, I suppose, rules in the beginning, just about how we would film with people. In terms of, the biggest piece was that we would allow people to speak for themselves, which seems so obvious, but yet a lot of documentaries in Ireland, in the UK, and further afield would always feature maybe a parent or a carer speaking first. It wouldn't necessarily be that the person with the disability didn't speak for themselves at all, but it was just about that positioning, that somebody was interpreting, and they might sometimes be even sitting beside the parent or carer, and it just felt not right. So that was something that we just, even when it came to the ordering of things in the edit, a very simple thing to correct, but it had a big impact. And I suppose the whole motivation of why we made it, I'll just let Zlata tell you a little bit about the background of where it came from.
So Anna and I have done a lot of work with the LGBT community and sort of stories, I guess, that are more the marginal ones to the kind of mainstream narratives. And we had worked with the LGBT community a lot. So it was actually as a part of making an LGBT documentary, a short documentary called Hold On Tight, which was about public displays of affection in Ireland with different LGBT couples. That we met one of the people who eventually was a participant in the documentary, who was a wheelchair user, Ciara Staunton, and she was a sister of the brother who we were also filming with. And we met her, and she was amazing and brilliant and funny and great, and we loved her. She also managed to go out with
She's
one of our...
dating one of our crew, actually.
Yes. So it was actually then, I think, that we realised, hang on a second, why do we never think about this? Like, these stories aren't really told. This is never connected. The story of relationships, love, dating, sexuality aren't really generally connected with the kind of when we're telling stories about disability. So it was kind of from that idea of marginalised stories, the stories that haven't been told, and meeting Kira that sort of really set it in motion and inspired us to do the documentary.
And then we discovered that there was a law that hadn't been changed in Ireland for over 100 years that really restricted people's ability to have relationships and criminalised their sexuality. And we thought, wow, in an Ireland where we're really talking about sexuality and the law, how is it that we're not talking about this enough? I mean, I know that there are obviously people out there who are absolutely working tirelessly at this, and obviously there's been some wonderful pieces in the press, but there hadn't been anything addressing it on RTE, which as a national broadcaster, was very important that it was a topic that was raised, and raised in a way that people didn't feel too, I suppose, challenged in a way. We thought it was good to focus on this very kind of human concept of just love and relationships. It wasn't necessarily about sex or facilitated sex, that it was about actually that very human desire to be loved and to love. And in that way we were able to talk to services and to people without having the door closed in our face, because there was a huge amount of fear obviously about bringing up this topic. And in that, we had to navigate a huge amount of things that I suppose we couldn't have foreseen. And when I talk about us going on a journey of learning, I suppose realising that, we did have to deal with the fact that people's lives were sometimes controlled, and controlled is very, a word with a lot of baggage, but, that people's lives were being I suppose supported, and people were being supported making decisions, but sometimes people were being restricted as well, and not supported in having relationships. And turning up as film crew and saying, well, we want to start actually, making a documentary about this, was intimidating for some people. But thankfully there were some services and some families that were incredibly supportive and allowed us in, gave us their trust, and that allowed us to kind of tell these stories. But we did have some very complicated situations when it came to consent, and which became legal, and in one instance we actually had to remove somebody entirely from the documentary, not just blur their face, but actually completely remove them from the programme, and from the story of their own life. And it was a really, probably I'd say in all of my career, and we've been working in kind of sensitive documentaries for many years, I've never dealt with such an ethically challenging situation. And really, if the law was clearer on consent and decision making, and we had the support to be able to go ahead with that story, we would have done, and we did try our best. But it was a real eye opener. It made us realise that there really is a huge issue there that needs to be addressed. I think we have to finish time up, but we hope you enjoy seeing it this afternoon. And if anybody would like to see the documentary, just get in touch with us directly, and we'll see if we can arrange a link or something for you. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna and Sally. So there will be an opportunity, I presume, in the final session, even if it's short, to talk as well also about the legal dimensions that they brought up. So the next two that are coming up separately are, as I mentioned, Dave Norden and Nicole Group. I should have said both of them are directors of the Big Smoke Writing Factory, so I don't know whether you can more about that, but we might. So,
yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm not a director. No. I can hardly direct myself now, not to mind anything else. I'm a director for the Illuminati, Yeah. But anyway, it was great to be asked about. It was great to be asked to come and speak at this conference. I think it's really good that what's started to happen in the last couple of years that artists are being invited to participate in events like this, and I think working between the disciplines is a good way to move things forward, because maybe we've something to give and that is absent otherwise. I found it kind of amusing to be asked to speak at a law conference because I don't know anything about the law. I do enjoy breaking it quite often, and always have, as it happens. And I suppose I'd be from that majority of the population which probably would be quite sceptical of the legal system and would have really only negative experiences of it. So that's where I would be coming from the law. And I suppose my favourite quote about the law is Brendan Behan, who says that there's no situation that can't be made worse by the arrival of the police. You know, so I suppose that's where I'm coming from. And that's how I've experienced the law, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think if we opened our ears to all the voices of society, we'd hear a lot more people saying that, to be honest with you. You know, so, but that's not what we're here for. I was asked to talk or give a poem about my experience of being treated inhumanly. And I certainly have had that experience. I suffered tremendous bullying at the hands of sadistic primary school teachers in Clonakilty, and also because the kids then copied the teachers, and because kids always learn how to bully from adults. So I'm interested in bullying, and they always learn how to do it from adults, and we were in a sort of a bully society where I grew up. And this is called Bullies. And it's written many years later when I heard that one of the boys that had most severely bullied me had killed himself. That's my reaction to it. Because of course you're always really hurting yourself when you're doing that. When I make my routine phone call home, we never talk about long ago, except for vague references. Mom says, things were different back then updates the local pages with all the latest births, deaths, disputes, christenings, and marriages. She's right. After all, childhood trauma makes for adult tedium, even when there's heaps of profit in it. Ask someone in the avant-garde of listening, a literary agent, say, a slush pile reader, or a prostitute, a small town barman, or a school psychologist. Unlike Mom, I can't seem to stop myself remembering, although I sometimes wonder if such cruelty as I can recall going through and witnessing could really have been allowed to exist as it did, that is, with the complicity of thousands in an average Irish town. You see, the little brute who made me chew worms with bleeding gums was only a compact, a figurine, a garden version inspired by the cell of fat sadists in teacher masks, who lined up in a 5-year-long gauntlet of terror for infants at the heart of our parish, in the midst of our community. Forward focus, let bygones be bygones, positivity, get lost. We're silent about past crimes because violence works, because a force field of implicit violence is ever present in our pyramidal world. It clamps us like a forceps at the moment of our birth. It locks us down in institutions when we're young. It never for a moment stops prodding us along. Its fuel is money, and it's powered by an engine of inexhaustible greed at the top. Strike out against the grid and you are guaranteed to activate a truncheon surge, wave upon wave of pepper spray, a plastic bullet whirlwind, a stun gun tsunami, death squads, rendition planes, black ops bombs and boiling bathtubs full of electricity. Against all that, I can give you only my defiance in the act of remembering a vanished schoolyard, a fat, serrated finger end poking at and tearing me, my bully boy telling me repeatedly, West Corkonian high-pitchedly, "You're dead! Do you hear me? You're dead! You're dead! Do you hear me? You're dead! You're dead! Do you hear me? You're dead!" After school, I I will be phalanxed by 9-year-old guards and led to a fagbutt, fuck and flagon field, a walled-in outlaw patch we call the Orchard, and forced into a scrap with him. Dozens ringed us, cheering him on, as he corkscrewed my neck, shoved fistfuls of muck in my mouth, bored his knuckles into my scalp, telling me, "You're dead! Do you hear me? You're dead! You're dead! Do you hear me? You're dead! You're dead! Do you hear me? You're dead!" Sure, it was himself all along he was killing. His spitting hubris and his hexing tongue deafened the world to his subsequent pleading. When his rural midnight swayed him near to vertiginous cliffs of sheer despair, he scanned the sky for staying signs, but the universe of grace withheld, and the ship of hope, drawing up its anchor, sailed off into a storm of oncoming time with his future. A shale-coloured shadow oozed out of everything. Trees, windows, sunlight, footpaths, bar stools, bottles, his own dark mirrored face. Night, numb and endless, got ready to absorb him. Then death, the no merciful, came thumping at the doorway of his life, and it was a mute and a towering executioner with a face made of scabs and rust, swinging fists of a nothingness unendurably dense, which drove and drove and drove and went on driving him down into an inevitable hole in the ground. He was no tougher then, and no more frightening, and no taller than those ant-sized words automatically wrapped out into pre-existing sentences, a standard entry in the local pages, another soon-to-be-forgotten statistical incident. A few days after his funeral, my unremembering mom passed on the news that he had taken his life, as if I should commiserate. I hung up. I felt a light-headed uplift of joy. I let out a screech of delight. I was alone in my bedroom, and no one was listening, save him, I like to imagine. I'd like him to know exactly what I said. I said, "You're dead. Do you hear me? You're dead." Thank you.
So I move straight on to Nicole, who is the director of the Six Smoke Writing Factory. Sorry, I got that mixed up.
So, thank you. It's great actually being the director of a, I suppose, creative enterprise, because it's a whole different level of direction. It's okay. Okay, we're following that, eh? Okay, so I was thinking storytelling, and I was thinking to make, I suppose, what I do very relevant. I'll try as much as I can. I'm just going to talk about stories. And starting off that, the one thing that came into my head when I was thinking about this was one of my favourite quotes, which is by the wonderful and great Willie Nelson, where he says, "Life is made up not of atoms, but of stories." I tend to agree. So I just thought I'd start with speaking a little bit, and then I'm going to actually tell a story, since it is about storytelling. I hope that's okay. So I thought I'd start off talking about my granny. So, because my granny would have kind of infused, I suppose, my love of story. And I remember when I would have been, I'd say like about 8 or 9, would have been the late 70s, without giving, obviously the picture in the programme's an old one, as you can probably see. So at that time, I remember I would have spent a lot of time with my granny, and she was always baking bread or writing, one or the other. And something happened at a particular period where she started writing furiously and with gusto. Years later, people would refer to it as her breakdown time, which I found very interesting because to me it looked like a breakthrough from where I was sitting. So she'd be writing away furiously, and she'd hand me a notebook as well to write, and no doubt I was writing, I wonder what Granny could be writing, because she was extraordinary at that moment. And what she was doing was she was writing stories about her time in an orphanage where she grew up. What she then started to do, a couple of years later, she got in with the journalist and she started publishing those stories in the newspaper. And they were hard stories about what she'd experienced, given out about the church, all her feelings, well before the can of worms started opening at the time. And what I remember really strongly was the people coming to the door. And in the Hollywood version, obviously, they're saying things like, "Go girl, you're so great," obviously, but it wasn't that. What they were saying was, "Anna, Nan, let it go. Anna, don't be saying that. Don't be publishing stories. Don't be telling people." So, you know, it was that kind of thing of the very nice and polite neighbourhood people telling her politely to be a lovely, you know, little Irish woman and just shut up. But she wouldn't. So for me, I suppose that's one area where I saw the power of story. I saw it in her. I saw how it affected people, how it annoyed people, how it shook up a small town. And I'm forever grateful to her for that. With my own experience of work, I work in performance. I also give, as Dave does, facilitate a lot of workshops in creative writing. I have worked a fair amount in places like prison. I've also worked in the psychiatric hospital in St. Pat's. So I've seen people, I've watched people find their own voice, find their own power through the story. And I just brought this with me. This was a project that was done in St. Pat's called Spears of Daylight, which was a really interesting project about people's writing and turning it into art and making it site-specific. There was a lot of trouble from management. When they saw some of the pieces, there was a lot of like, we're upset, we're afraid this is going to embarrass the hospital, people are saying too much. So I thought to myself, it's on one level, maybe this is really working. When I worked in prison, I worked in both a female and a male prison. A lot of collecting people's story. Again, as I said, just watching people find their voice. It's the most extraordinary thing. I see it all the time. I get to live in this world. And also, I suppose, people who don't have any other outlet will have that opportunity. In prison, it was also doing Shakespeare with the lads, which allowed them to really access their own stories, a lot of them being harsh. So, I'm going to cut to the chase, and I'm going to do a little story of my own, if that's okay. This is written at a time, I suppose it was when it's about a story of my own that was a difficult story to go through. This is a reflection back on the story as opposed to it itself. And the thing about it is, sometimes just having people you can tell that story to is what gets you through. So this is for the two people I could tell the story to. So here we go. It's called Tea or Gin. Forgot my keys again. Hand pressed on the bell, my head on the door. When it opens, you're both standing there. One of you takes my hand, leads me inside. No questions asked. These moments are always silent. It's gas, really. She were usually such talkers, but all this has brought a sort of quietness. I take off my coat and my shoes and I go into the kitchen. Something is lovely on the hob. Oh, comfort food. I go to my usual spot by the washing machine and I lie down. Arms stretched out to the side and then that breath finally comes. Oh, waiting all day feels long lost. Once it's out, I can sink right down. Palms push against the wood, eyes shut tight. I think about how the trees became our kitchen floor, go through the stages in my mind of the process. It's funny where the mind wanders, isn't it? Me and Flora. Flora and me. I hear you stirring the pot. Stew. Your special stew. And you, kneeling down beside me, your lips coming close to my ear, whisper, is it a tea or a gin day, hon? The day. Clank of heels on hard tile floors, grey lost faces, submissions on behalf of the prosecution. My clothes stink of the courtroom benches and polish of courtroom one. Gin. It's a gin day. Ice, fizz, lemon, stirring vigorously. You even have a swizzle stick. A true expert in the art of gin and tonic. Slices the edge of the world, you say. Stew and gin. A long hot shower and a dress. And you take me dancing to Reraw at the back of the Globe on Georgia Street. Reraw. The Irish for chaos, disorder, someone told me. Inside it's dark and loud and easy to hide. We find a table, the two of you chat while I watch people glide across the dance floor, lights landing on the head and shooting upwards. A guy comes over and sits beside me. Oh, Jesus, he's smiling, poor guy. He can't see in the darkness that I'm broken. I panic at the idea that he might try small talk, but one of you is on it. You touch his arm and gently shake your head. Not with her. He gets it and moves on. And then on the dance floor, arms flaying, twisting, feet stamping, music louder, faster, moving up through me, infecting me, pushing out the rest of the shit of the day. You both dance with me for a while and then you leave me to it as I make my way further down into the crowd towards the wall at the back. There it is. Stretched out in front of me, I push and hit and slide, sometimes spread my whole body against it. Let it hold me, offer resistance, always solid. The wall and the dance, and right now that is all there is. I'll be gone for hours. Me and wall. Wall and me. And then something distracts. Tall, skinny guy tipping me on the shoulder, wide, hopeful eyes and a gesture. What? He does it again. He thinks I'm off my head on some great drug. Oh, if only. Can I have some of what you're on? I've nothing. Just heartbreak and grief and a world of shit I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And he looks so utterly sad. You can share the wall if you like. Are you sure? Yeah, go on. Just throw yourself at it. And off we go, both of us in our own patch. It's actually kind of nice because I've never had anyone join me on the wall before. When the night ends and the lights come up, he hugs me tight, like I'm his big sister, that kind of a hug. Whispers, thanks. As I walk back to the table, I see both of you smiling at me and I suddenly feel so vulnerable and raw, like I've no skin on. I wonder how you can bear this, bear me. Most of my friends and half my family can't handle the brokenness at all. I don't blame them. If I could, I would run far away to the mountains or the sea or the desert, anywhere. But I'd have to take myself with me. Yeah, isn't that the way? Isn't that the deal with this living business? I realise that I've stopped moving and clutching onto a pillar on the side of the dance floor. Oh, can't go forward or back. One of you comes over and puts your arm around me. Whisper. Will we go home and have tea? We sit at the kitchen table with candles burning. You both tell funny stories from your childhood, the ones I love to hear again and again. We laugh like mad wild things. And then I tell you about today's decision, that it's been transferred to the circuit court. I tell you it's going to trial. I don't know what will happen next, but there may be some dark days ahead, and if you want to bail out now, I'll understand. But you both just smile and shake your head. Seems like the goddess of stew and the goddess of gin are in for the long haul. And sitting here right now in this kitchen, I feel such a rush of love for both of you women that I can hardly breathe. And we raise our cups to those dark days ahead. Bring it on, we say. Let's see what you got. From here on in, I'd say they'd be mostly gin days. Thank you.
So if anybody has any doubts about the power of stories and poetry, I think they have been dissipated.